Hello and welcome back to the channel where once again it's time for another Sega Saturn review, with us today taking a look at Battle Arena Toshinden Remix, a game which first saw release in Japan in November of 1995 before coming out in the PAL and North American regions in March of 1996. It's worth pointing out that it's an updated version of the original Toshinden game, which came out on the PlayStation back in January of 1995 in Japan and then September of 95 in the PAL and North American territories. So the storyline for Toshinden is pretty vague. Many years have passed since the tournament was last held, and now 8 travelling fighters have been brought together by a common destiny. Some of the fighters are there for personal glory, others have come to fight for those that they love, but they will all be doing their best to be victorious in the tournament. One thing you'll notice as soon as you turn on Toshinden Remix is that the game has a full motion introduction video that is not present in the PlayStation original, and this is something that I always stress is important. When games come out on another system a long time after their original release, they need additional bits of content or something to make it feel like it's worth getting them, and thankfully the Saturn version starts off positively in this area. So once you hit the main menu, you'll see you've got a few options there. You've got story mode, you've got one player game, you've got VS Human, you've got VS Computer, and you've got options as well. Heading into options, you've got a few things that you can change: difficulty, number of rounds, time limit, automatic guarding on or off, and you can also change the keypad configuration layout. So once you hit the character selection screen, you will see you've got a choice of 8 default characters: IGK, Sophia, Rungo Fo, Mondo, Duke, and Ellis. So like always, I'm going to start with the visuals first, and I will highlight what I think are the small few positives within the game. I think it's got real nice presentation from the main menu through to the character selection screen, and I think the art style for all the characters within the storyline sequences are actually nice. They genuinely appeal to me, but that is where the positives pretty much stop. Unfortunately, Toshinden Remix came out almost 1 year after the original game. Now, when the original game came out on the PlayStation at the start of 1995, it was a technical showpiece for the system. 3D texture map polygons weren't common in games at that point in time, so Toshinden stood out. Fast forward a year when we had Virtua Fighter 2 looming in Japan, and actually by the time Toshinden Remix came out in the PAL and North American territories, Virtua Fighter 2 had already been out for several months. It then looked dated. It simply doesn't look as good as the games that were coming out at that point in time. Now, it doesn't mean that Toshinden Remix looks absolutely terrible, because it doesn't. It's better looking than some of the other fighting games that we've looked at, like Rise 2 and Battle Monsters, but the character models don't have the detail of some other games. The animations are not as smooth, and the character models are also a little bit glitchy. I think the backgrounds are okay though. There's a fair bit of variety between all of them, and whilst they don't look stunning, they look reasonable for the time period that the game came out in. But overall, you just get the sense and feeling that this game, if it had come out earlier in the Saturn's life, would have been received a little bit more positively in terms of its visual style.
Cannon flash. Cannon flash.
So moving on to the sound effects and music next, and what a lot of people I don't think realise, or certainly at least underestimate, is the quality of the soundtrack within Battle Arena Toshinden Remix. It's genuinely good. Some of the tracks are absolutely brilliant. Now, when I've spoke about the game previously in the past, I mentioned that I didn't feel the tunes necessarily fit a one-on-one fighter, and I still stand by that now, but that doesn't take away from the fact they're actually of very high quality, and they're actually very good to listen to as well outside of the game. In terms of the sound effects though, they do not match the quality of the music. One of the reasons is because there's not that many moves per character on the game. You start hearing the same sound effects over and over again, and it gets very repetitive. They're also not of the highest quality in terms of their clarity, so the sound effects aren't particularly impressive. The game does also have fully voice acted sequences for the story mode, which I think for this point in time is actually quite impressive. It's by no means the best voice acting that you're going to get, but at the same time, it's by no means the worst.
You were 1,000 miles away.
The way you fought, I've seen it before.
And of course it wouldn't be the same if I didn't give you some samples of the music tracks within the game as well. So moving on to the gameplay next, and we've got a 4-button interface primarily here with 2 slash attacks and 2 kick attacks, a weaker one and a stronger one. You can also dodge to the right and the left with the R and L buttons, and that in principle is absolutely fine. If you're playing on easy or very easy, you can actually allocate some of your special moves to the buttons as well to avoid putting in the input commands, which is a nice touch, and it's actually good for novice players. But really the positives end there and the negatives start to mount up. First of all, there aren't many moves to each character. You've got basic weapon and kick attacks, and the combos are practically non-existent. There is no reversal system, it's just a very basic block mechanic. Your characters do have a handful of special moves each, and they can also pull off superstar moves when their HP is flashing red, which is a nice touch. But we've got some problems here because there's a complete imbalance between the characters and the power of their special moves. Sometimes one character can pull off a special move and it will do a very small amount of damage, and then another character will pull off a special move and it will do a huge amount of damage to you. It is completely imbalanced. I feel like it wasn't play tested thoroughly before it was released, but the problems don't just end here because the gameplay is very, very shallow. It's also very sluggish, like most Takara fighting games from this period of time. If you're coming from Virtua Fighter 2 to play this, for example, you will notice how slow and lackluster it plays, and it is also very boring simply because it is such a basic fighting game and there's such a limited moveset for each character as well. We've also got a terrible camera which cannot keep up with the action, which means a lot of the time your characters will end up facing the wrong way and completely miss the opponent when you're attacking them. It is at heart very, very basic, very repetitive, and a very shallow fighting game.
Sonic Flash! Yeah!
So moving on to content and lifespan next, and I feel for a November 1995 release, Toshinden Remix actually performs relatively well in terms of its content, and that's mainly down to the fact that it has a fully voiced story mode for each of the main characters. This is something that was completely unheard of in 3D fighting games at the time, and I think the developers deserve a massive amount of credit for adding this into the game over the PlayStation original. To go with the 8 main characters, we've also got 3 additional characters, Shogai and Cupido, that can be unlocked as well, although it doesn't take very long at all to unlock them. We've also got your standard one-player arcade mode, one-on-one battles against the computer and against a friend. You can have big head mode as well, and the characters have got additional costumes that can be unlocked by pressing down A, B, and C when you select your character. So there is a bit of content here. The downside is, of course, the fact that the characters simply don't have many moves at all, and of course this moves on to the lifespan, and the fact the game's lifespan is actually really poor because it is so repetitive and so shallow. You will get tired of it very quickly. I don't even think you'll have the patience to play through each of the characters' story modes simply because the game gets so boring so quickly.
Deadly rain! Yeah!
So like always, that leaves me with my two final questions. Is Battle Arena Toshinden Remix still worth playing in this day and age? And does it have the quality to make our PAL and Worldwide Saturn top 10s? Well, I don't think it will come as much of a surprise when I say it's probably not worth revisiting, mainly due to the fact that it's got such shallow, repetitive, sluggish gameplay that it's just not that enjoyable. I think it's fantastic that it actually has a story mode for each character, and a lot of games could have learnt something from this point in time, but ultimately I don't think it's worth revisiting. Does it have the quality to make our top 10s? No, of course it doesn't. You can see them going up the screen now, and the kind of games that are in those lists are simply vastly superior to Toshinden Remix. It wouldn't even have the quality, I don't think, to make a top 10 3D fighters on the system, if I'm being completely fair. But of course, these are just my thoughts, and my thoughts alone. One thing I will point out is that I feel it's actually a better experience overall than Toshinden URA on the Saturn. I genuinely think it is. But of course, let me know your thoughts down below on Battle Arena Toshinden Remix. Did you buy it when it came out on the Saturn, or perhaps you just had the original version on the PlayStation? How do you think they compare with one another? Leave me your thoughts down below, and like always, I'll be back in the near future with another video. Goodbye for now.